Everyone, I welcome you all to this iconic building of the Bombay Stock Exchange, which has an age-old history of more than 138 years and often considered as Sensex is the barometer of Indian economy. Before we start the event, I request everyone to stand up for national anthem.
पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you, everyone. Today we are pleased to introduce the panel discussion on Road Ahead for the Mutual Fund Industry and SRO as a Catalyst. About the event, I shall just brief the audience. FIAI, that is Financial Intermediaries Association of India, in association with the Bombay Stock Exchange and BSE Brokers Forum, is conducting today a panel discussion on Road Ahead for the Mutual Fund Industry and SRO as a Catalyst. Eminent industry leaders are present here from various segments of the capital market to have a brainstorming session and exchange ideas on the issues facing the challenges and opportunities of the mutual fund industry. The event shall showcase the important role played by the mutual fund distributors in the growth of the mutual fund industry and the upcoming big events for the mutual fund industry, that is setting up of MF Distributors SRO. And hence, the title of the event has thus been appropriately kept as Road Ahead for the Mutual Fund Industry and SRO as a Catalyst. Today, senior industry captains would exchange their thoughts and would create a vibrant environment for a healthy discussion, which would create a ground-level field for creation of an appropriate SRO so that the mutual fund industry develops and ultimately the investors also benefit. With this welcome remarks, now I would invite the panelists on the dais. The panel 1 discussion is about importance of upcoming mutual fund distributors SRO, whereby SRO can act as a bridge between the investors and the mutual fund distributors. Now I request Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan, Managing Director and CEO, BSE Limited, to please come on the dais. Mr. Deepak Chatterjee, ex-MD CEO, SBI Mutual Fund. Mr. Dhirendra Kumar, Founder and CEO, Value Research. Ms. Uma Shashikant, Founder and MD, Center for Investment Education and Learning. And the moderator for the panel discussion, Mrs. Dina Mehta, MD, Ashit C. Mehta, Investment Intermediaries Limited. Friends, it is our Indian culture that before we start any auspicious event, we always light the lamp which marks the diminishing of the ignorance and spread of knowledge. I would request the entire panel, along with Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, to please light the lamp. Thank you, everyone. Now, without taking much of the time of the respected audience, I request ma'am to initiate the session, panel discussion.
Was still 4:50. Now what time do I wind up? It is 4:30. What time do I wind up? 5. Half an hour. Good.
Along with question answer. Then we'll have 5 minutes question answer.
Okay, then we'll have 5. Okay. Everybody, welcome you all to this panel discussion. A very strong topic. Should we not have an SRO? Of course, SEBI says we should have an SRO. Even for exchanges, SEBI has been trying to introduce the SRO concept. SEBI has tried to introduce it for the manufacturers, that is for mutual funds, even for merchant bankers. Unfortunately, nobody has really taken the bait and become an SRO. But I'm happy to note that the mutual fund distributors have come together, and a self-regulating mechanism is on the way, on anvil, I would say, provided SEBI approves the concept. And we are here today to discuss this concept. I would like to say at the onset that having spent 30 years in the industry, I have very strong views on the subject, and I may tend to be biased one way or the other. So please look at this discussion as much as possible from a outsider point of view, rather than getting emotionally involved in the issue. With that disclaimer, I would first start with Ashish, having A alphabet as well as owning the premises that we are in. Ashish, what I would like to ask you is that you have a mutual fund platform. You are allowing the distributors to directly come and post the transactions on the system. Then why do you think that there should be one more layer of regulation whereby an SRO would be listing the members, it would be controlling them. You also would be regulating those people who participate on the platform. So, I want your views on what do you feel on this subject, that, one more layer, will it burden, or you would let go some things? And also tell me why AMCs are not using the platform and they are creating their own platform. So, this whole duplication of resources which is happening in this system, I think we should hear your views on that.
Sure. Good evening. I think there are several issues in one question you asked. Today I had some people from America, and they were asking me questions on our structure of the regulatory framework. And they said, do you have a separate derivatives regulator and a separate securities regulator like we have? And they were completely convinced that their regulatory framework is much better than ours. So I told that you are a part of what your history has kind of taken you till now. And we are a part of our history, what has taken us till now. So we have a same regulator for derivatives and equities, but we have a different regulator for the commodities. Whereas for you, the commodities regulator actually allowed trading in financial futures in Chicago, and New York was actually opposing, and that's where you have basically, these are all quirks of history. And when we look at the other nations who we take it as our models or role models, and we start comparing, saying that they have this kind of regulatory structure, so we need to copy them without understanding how actually this adds value or takes away value. So that is one aspect I wanted to give you, that no system or no regulator or no self-regulatory organization or no framework stays or exists outside the system. Then you actually impose it, and then it becomes a part of the system. It creates many solutions, but also creates its own issues going forward. Second issue is about transaction platform. So the way I conceptualize the overall regulatory role of a regulatory organization is that if it remains in regulatory framework, it doesn't matter at all. But if we think that regulatory framework's role also is to protect the interest of its people within that, then who are the people who are comprising of that regulatory organization? Is it the mutual funds? Is it the distributors? It is the investors. Whose interest are we protecting, or are we planning to protect? And for me, that is a very fundamental question, which at least I have not yet got answer in my own mind, that finally many self-regulatory organizations of different types can exist. And one is already existing in a sense with an ability to register and sort of charge them fees for becoming a registered intermediary or a distributor. In that sense, AMFI does exist. And what it has done till now would also tell us what is the forward path going. And for me, the transaction processing, the way I understand is, if AMFI creates its own transaction processing framework, it will have a huge marginal cost, additional cost, because today they don't have the ability to run it. Or they don't have the platform, so they will have to set up an organization. AMFI is basically not having that kind of a manpower to run it, so they will probably outsource and you can still do it. But the additional cost could be in, of running this kind of systems in India could be in several tens of crores, if not hundreds of crores a year. And it requires a lot of technical changes as regulations go. On the other side, the exchanges are already providing that platform for equities, for derivatives, for currencies. Marginal cost for them is close to zero of giving additional facility. That's how these exchanges are actually giving this framework. And if you take that, which will finally win? The one which is mandated by the regulation but imposes higher cost on the system, or one which is actually leveraging what is actually existing elsewhere? And so for me, at the same time, if you mandate it regulatorily, then you are not allowing competition to happen. And for me, ultimately, all of us, whether it is exchanges, whether it is mutual funds, whether it is distributors, brokers, all of us ultimately work for the benefits of the investors. And if we are adding more cost onto him, we are basically doing a disservice. So for me, these are some of the issues still, how the SRO will come up, who will be running it, whose benefits. And so for me, these are some of the issues that are unanswered, but I'm sure going forward, somewhere they will get answered.
So Ashish, you believe that, the best man who gives at the cheapest possible transaction cost, he is going to survive.
And also most flexible.
Course, most flexible.
Because the regulatory system is changing so rapidly that you need to have an organization which responds to that and changes itself.
Okay. I think I will take one word from Ashish's thing, that a lot of SROs have evolved actually. If you look at Brokers Association, 1875, they were standing under a tree and they were, transacting. So, there is an evolution process. People just came together unofficially. Then they made a society or a registration they took. And then, they became an exchange. Then they became a demutualized exchange. So this whole evolution process has taken place. So Uma, I would, like to ask you that, that kind of evolution process is missing over here. So, so that one challenge is there of, members' affinity and members, tendency to respect each other. And more so when there is no deliverable. See, if you look at the exchange as an SRO, it has a fantastic deliverable, and that is the trade guarantee. Today, the biggest advantage on coming on the exchange platform is all your trades are guaranteed. Whereas if you look at, mutual fund SRO, or even, look at a CA Institute, that SRO, since there is no deliverable, how much is it going to be challenging on the SRO to win the acceptance and the respect of the users of the system?
I think that's a very valid point, because when you're looking at SROs that have worked and SROs that have not worked, that's the distinction. Because is there a penalty to not following the code of conduct? If you looked at the medical council, if the medical council does not penalize a doctor who doesn't follow the code of conduct, then it becomes just an ornamental organized entity, even though it has regulatory sanction. If you looked at the mutual fund distribution, I think the problem we have on hand really is this rapid increase in activity at the start coming from a sales orientation. and a very visible and clear pushback from the investor as well as the regulator, saying that these practices are not in the interest of the investor. I think that's fairly well established, that somewhere the credibility of the advisor distributor as someone who works in the interest of the customer needs to be restored. Now, if you want to have a certain quality associated to that promise, I believe that this whole idea of having SROs for advisors and for the regulator, unlike what you're pointing out, where there is an established association which then becomes an SRO. In this case, you have SEBI saying that form an SRO, So I think this comes from this understanding that somewhere that quality of that promise requires restoration. So a structure where you're saying that there would be an established code of ethics, there would be qualifications and certification requirements, there would be membership criterion, and importantly, an SRO does three things. It takes care of the code of ethics membership, it takes care of executionary, activities of execution, and it does arbitrage penalties, settling disputes. So if these three things come together, I think the regulator's intent is that the restoration of trust amongst the investor. When an advisor goes to the investor is able to say, okay, this advisor is regulated by an entity and has gone through this process of certification and membership into an elite group, some kind of entry barriers, if you will. So somewhere the idea is that investor trust could get restored. My sense is that whether that outcome will be achieved will to a large extent depend on whether this body sees itself as a club, a lobbying body, protecting itself from a regulator which curbs its business, or is it structuring itself as someone who would stand by the customer and rebuild the trust that has been lost. I think from that perspective, the distributor SRO's task is very uphill, requires very high standards to be set, and a visionary view to how you want to do things. Very contrary to what you're pointing out, where self-interest drives what is done. So here I think the game has changed, so the task is tougher.
I think I will take this point forward, and that is, of this conflict of interest. Deepak, I would, like to get your views. That one more entity which is also in fray to become an SRO is AMFI, which is a manufacturers association. Now, do you see any conflict of interest happening between a manufacturer trying to regulate the distributors? I mean, how would it work? Because today also, they come, they do audit, we have a long questionnaire. I mean, it's not really going very well, and I do not know what purpose it is serving in this, current state of affairs which are there. So, if at all AMFI becomes an SRO, these things would continue, and they are not serving any purpose. So, I would like your views on that.
I think it will help if we, try to look at the international experience, and I think the best country to look at is the United States. Now, how does it operate there? The main regulator is the SEC that was established in 1934. Now, SEC delegated it to other entities like NSAD and also New York Stock Exchange and other exchanges. They were performing some kind of regulatory work, but much later, I think that was year 2007, all this was clubbed and given to an entity called FINRA. Now, you have similar examples in Canada and other geographies. Wherever you have effective SROs in place, and if you really notice the word self in it, that self word has to be respected. Otherwise, you cannot have a person who is so neutral that he is completely remote from the industry and he then tries to regulate. And you also cannot have a person who is on the other side, maybe there is an inherent conflict, so that also will not work. So I think it makes immense sense that this SRO, whoever it is, emerges from within the intermediaries, within the distributor fraternity. That is how it has happened in the US, other geographies. That is how it is happening in India on the broking side as well, right? Correct. So I agree with you. In fact, being a manufacturer myself till recently, I personally feel that a manufacturer's body, industry, that's an industry body, AMFI, you're specifically referring to AMFI. AMFI is an industry body, and to borrow a phrase from from UMA, that whether it is a lobbying body or whatever, very often these platforms are lobbying platforms, and lobbying is not a wrong word. But then point is, when the same body tries to create another entity to become an SRO, whether huge responsibility is cast on it, then I think the issue of conflict of interest has to be very carefully addressed. He has to be a party which is very, very familiar with how business is done, preferably someone from within the intermediaries. At the same time, no conflict, and not a completely unrelated party. Yeah.
I think, Dhirendra, I will come to you. You have been, evaluating mutual funds for a long, long time, and giving lot of value add so far as the investors are concerned. So, do you think that having an SRO, or body of persons, would add further value so far as the investors are concerned when they come to invest in mutual funds? Will it, because this will be the only body which will be having an SRO. So does it make mutual fund a better class of asset just because there is an SRO?
Personally speaking, I think there is no role for an SRO. There are people who are regulated, and the people who, creating this additional layer is a very meaningless exercise. But I don't think it's a matter of choice. Now, SEBI has decided to delegate this regulatory, delegate this particular regulatory responsibility to an SRO, and it has thought that SRO is a better way. Maybe it's their own lack of bandwidth, or as you were saying earlier, that there are regulatory bodies or SROs or quasi-regulators who have the wherewithal to do it. They have the, something like stock exchange, which I think all those transactions which we are referring to, they are very mechanical process. They are very mundane process. You can, it can be very, it is very quantitative. You can measure it, you can actually block, you can put an embargo on, you can define a default, you can define extra risk or something, the margining requirement, all those kind of things. Unlike that, selling a mutual fund can have a lot of soft variables. Somebody who is consistently mis-selling and will not get caught, and will get caught, or will maybe perhaps never get caught, or you can actually capture only the fraudulent things. And that can be penalized, that can be measured, that can be quantified. So my sense is that this is needed, whether it is a SRO or it is a division of SEBI, it must have the intelligence. And it requires a very different kind of skill. I don't think it is up to any SRO to do it. It requires a lot of resources in terms of ability to capture data, find the behavior patterns. Because if you look at the number of investors who are involved here, there are just far too many. It is very difficult to do a survey that what is your experience, because somebody can be sold something, and we are trying to embed that into these regulations. What is a fair conduct? And also it is extremely important to define what are we trying to regulate. I think those things are still blurred. Are we trying to regulate the people who are processing transactions, or are we trying to regulate the advisors? Regulating advice is very tricky. As Uma was saying, that nobody has been able to penalize the doctors as efficiently, or we haven't come across so many instances. It's very hard to do it. So what I'm saying is that, somewhere these things are getting blurred, and it needs to be very well articulated. Otherwise, it is destined to fail, or it will just be a non-starter, or it will be there for the sake of it.
Actually, I would, you were mentioning before this, we started this discussion, the kind of, infrastructure which FINRA has, 3,500 employees, which even SEBI does not have. And if you look at the investment advisors, if we, take insurance people also, who are also, some kind of mutual fund and other advice they give, fixed deposits and all this. So about, 1.7 million or, maybe 2 million advisors are around. And of course, number of brokers are hardly 8 or 10,000, and active ones are only 1,000. So the sheer number, do you think that the SRO would have that kind of infrastructure to really manage this thing?
I think that is precisely the reason why we need an SRO. See, simple. FINRA, as you said, as we were discussing, has around 3,500 employees. It operates out of Washington, out of New York, and 20 regional offices. So that is their reach. Of course, that industry is huge. American industry, to that extent, is huge. the mutual fund side. But that kind of manpower is required, that kind of dedication is required, hands-on, absolutely. If you really want to have a proper regulatory framework, it is impossible for SEC to do that in US, which is why they're delegated. It is impossible for SEBI to do that in India. So instead of expanding SEBI and making it into a monolith, it's better that it's delegated, which is precisely the reason. And once an SRO is appointed under the regulations are pretty tough, then that entity will have to rise to the occasion and fulfill all the requirements, right? In terms of manpower, in terms of governing structures, in terms of manpower, everything. Because if they don't, I think the appointment will be for 5 years. The next 5 years, they'll be out. So I think it will work out. And that is precisely the reason why the SRO is required.
Yeah, Ashish, since you are kind of heading an SRO, see, what I have seen is that every new entity, we are brokers even before SEBI came. SEBI does not let go, whatever powers it has. For example, we are audited by exchanges. Then we are audited by SEBI also. See, I understand if in part of an investigation, if they come to broker's office and try to find out something, but then there is a regular calendar every 2 years. As a broker, you are regulated because you are BSc broker, then you are regulated because you are NSE broker, you are inspected because you are DP. So many hats that we wear, at a time. Sometimes there are 45, auditors who are sitting in our office. So having an SRO, do you think is going to have an added layer of regulation, or is there any roadmap of letting go certain functions so that ultimately, this body becomes supreme?
I think it's a part of the evolution. In the beginning, I think SEBI is a very young regulator, let us face it. It's around 20-year-old since they got the powers. Okay? And so in the beginning, there is always a tendency to take everything together because everything had an issue according to the regulator when he's new. And then now I see the reverse happening, that slowly they are trying to give up. So sub-broker registration, they used to do, now it is being an exchange job, although there are not many sub-brokers who are active. But similarly, FII registration, now the new regulations as and when they are announced, will be actually registered with the custodian themselves. So what I have seen is, last 1 year specifically, there has been a sea change in SEBI's own thinking about how to regulate and whether to have all the powers with them or to kind of have intermediary things. That reminds me of this specific issue which brokers are facing of they wearing many hats and having too many auditors coming to them. What we have proposed is as follows, which is being discussed. I don't know when the decision will be taken, is that if you are a member of 5 or 10 regulated or regulatory agencies as a member, not SEBI, but say DP and 2 depositories and 3 exchanges, and only one at a time in a year will basically do the inspection, and then the next year somebody else, and so on and so forth. So if that is done, and also there should be a criteria of ABC kind of a thing, where an intermediary dealing with millions of customers needs more inspection vis-a-vis an intermediary who is not dealing with more than 100 investors and so on and so forth. There is a methodology which we have proposed. It is being discussed. I don't know whether it will finally come to some fruition which is practical, because otherwise the smaller brokers who are kind of one-man shows or few people shops, they end up having undue burden of the regulatory, too many regulators coming onto them. And third thing is on BSE being an SRO or a depository being an SRO. In some sense, if you say basically SRO regulates its members, then it's an SRO, BSE. But if it says that an SRO is made up, in some sense managed by its members, then from last year it is not, because last year onwards the BSE members are not on its board, so from September of 2012 onwards. So in a sense, it has become more like a service provider with a regulatory mandate, and it doesn't have, since it's regulating its own members, it doesn't want to create a conflict of interest. So by regulation, SEBI has said that you don't have to have your members on the board. So for me, having a new movement to create SROs of various types is a very welcome move in that evolutionary phase that 20 years back SROs were not so good. And after 20 years, now we are saying, at least let us try SROs. And I think it's a very welcome move because, as Dhirendra also pointed out, it's very difficult to regulate so many people by pure regulatory fiat. It will have to be some, what I call, role modeling, some peer pressure, and we need to experiment as the rest of the world is experimenting. The last part is on FINRA. Because America has FINRA, we think it is great, but I can tell you, FINRA got its powers largely because NASDAQ, which was another SRO, did not function itself well. So when they were fined huge amounts for market making scandal, they came out with a via media saying, we'll cut ourselves into a different part and you call it SRO. For me, having 20 offices, 3,500 people doesn't mean anything at all. Right? And SEC maybe having 10 times more people also doesn't mean anything at all. By weighing basically in kilos, for me, you can't do regulations.
I think one of the biggest challenges what is emerging is the primary concern. It's easier to register people. It's not a big deal. You get the registration form. You have a criteria to select the people. But I think what you mentioned is that mis-selling and all complaints relating to that. Because I have read in the earlier form NASD, they used to publish a booklet of all the arbitration cases that came before them. And there are two essential kinds of cases. One is members inter se, complaining against each other that, he tried to do some malpractice, and other is customers complaining mis-selling. So this mis-selling is something which is a primary concern, which the SRO would be addressing. Besides the giving away administrative work of saying you do certification, you enroll member, that's very easy. So, how challenging is it for the SRO to really do this function of seeing to it that it is looked upon as a fair organization by the customers as well as the members of the SRO?
No, I think that itself justifies the existence of or coming into being of this SRO, because this will require a lot of institutional knowledge being embedded into it, which I'm very confident of SEBI not absorbing it, because I can tell you from the standpoint of my experience and interaction that officers change in the mutual fund division, and then that is the beginning of the whole new learning. So I think having establishment which is committed or dedicated with a task, and then it builds the knowledge and understanding, it is able to absorb it, retain it, and evolve it from there. Because it's very straightforward for people in an organization like this that soon after they come into being, that what is mis-selling, what is wrong information being provided, wrong complaint, because in a rising market, even investors could be at fault. They could be making a claim which may not be true. And I think the least of all, the fraudulent things, those are system captured. Making the system efficient so that it is foolproof, that has been reasonably done by SEBI. If you look at, the money comes into the fund, comes from a bank account, the proceeds always go back into the fund investor's account. So the kind of things which we used to see long back in the absence of that, and technology is making it much easier. All we have to do is doing this filtration and making sure this registration and all those things, as you said, that is pretty straightforward. You just have to set up the eligibility norms, do the registration, do some kind of compliance. I think the second most important thing will be upgradability. We have seen the whole market evolve so radically. And we have seen, and there I think two things. One is the upgradation of the intermediaries as well as the regulatory body. That apart, market forces are good enough to actually weed out the people who are unable to catch up.
I think one last question, since the entire board of the SRO is sitting in front of us, I would like all of you to give at least one suggestion to them so that when they formally form the SRO, they are really effective and they give a big service to the investing community. One suggestion, each of you.
I think the kind of galaxy of people that we have in front of us, I think they don't need much advice. I think they know their game pretty well, and their intentions are very, very genuine. They're seriously concerned about the welfare of the industry, and I think they also know all the rumblings and the noise that has been around about mis-selling. So I think a lot of reliance will have to be made on technology. I think that is for sure, because some things have to be captured through technology instead of wasting time. And once a bad transaction, a wrong kind of a selling or some bad practices captured, I think that should be punished with exemplary punishment, I think. I'm sure they will do that.
So you think they should use a lot of technology?
Technology is...
Okay, Ashish, what about you?
I second what he said. One thing, I mean, I was just, since he asked, my immediate reaction is that if you have to become acceptable, because that would be an issue with Amphi situation with you guys and everyone. If you put it in your mandate saying that none of us will be on the board, only people who we are going to service are going to be on the board, then probably you are tilting the scale in favor of who we are supporting, I mean, who we are actually working on. So for me, there is an inherent conflict of interest, as pointed out by every one of us, that in any SRO, there is an inherent conflict of interest. And how do you twist it to say that here we are there to service the country? And how do I come out of that? I mean, a medical board should not have doctors. Similarly, because otherwise, how do you regulate yourself, right? And so for me, if you can twist it, it will still service you and service them both. But finally, we are all here to service the investors.
So Ashish says, please copy BSE model. Okay. Okay. What about you?
No, one is that, I have only one suggestion, which is have as much of an unambiguous code of conduct. Because, the whole thing is being done in a manner so that it is least understandable, it is most vague. So, we are coming into an age, and I come from Delhi, where I find that, things which are very well articulated, understood, with clarity, with simplicity, which Aam Aadmi Party demonstrated, was very impressive. So, write things which is easy to, clearly understood, and not the vague motherhood statements which people come up with.
I think, going with this code of conduct, I am also on board of Chartered, Securities Institute, which is subsidiary of the London Exchange. We have published a booklet. So for every good conduct, there are list of practices. So then they will say that this practice is as per good code of conduct, and this is gray area, so you decide in favor. So I think it is not just enough to have code of conduct, you should also have the practices which are embedded in the code, so that there is no confusion at all. Okay, what about you?
So I think they must pick their priority, is what I would tell them, because there are three major areas, as I said. There is one thing of who will be your, your member, and what are the criteria you're going to put for him. If you looked at ICAI, for instance, the Chartered Accountants Institute very clearly was able to say that unless you are a CA, you cannot sign the accounts. Managed to get that. And I think a lot of energies of that institute is spent on that exam. Now, I'm not saying they should do that, but I'm only saying that it's a task, again, in terms of who will come in. So that's a job. And then there is this whole idea of execution, where I would use the stock exchange as an example, where there are tremendous amount of risks on how the executionary body functions in terms of how the activities of these registered members will take place. So that is a big task, again, in the distribution space, more in the context of things that you have said, because much of these are not really straightforward, like default or settlement guarantee in an exchange. These are still qualitative ideas. So there is a lot of work to be done in terms of saying how a member will conduct himself and how this body is going to ensure that the execution of these activities happen. And then there is this huge job of arbitrage, penalty, hearing grievances and stuff like that. My sense is each one of these is a huge task in itself, calls for a lot of resources, thinking, time, and all of this. An SRO should do all of this. There is no doubt it should do all of this. But considering that this is a new body, you have to pick and make those early gains, keeping that investor in mind, saying, somebody who's a registered advisor with me is someone who you can trust. Because on the ground, there is a requirement for building that trust. So doing a set of activities which restores that should be the priority, and pick these well, because there are a lot of tasks. It's a complex and lengthy set of things to do.
So I think they must draw up a roadmap that these are the 10 things that need to be done. We will do this in year 1, year 2, year 3, so that you don't take on everything on day 1 and then, you know, end up just falling under the weight of so many responsibilities.
There was just one thing I wanted to add here. I think it's very critical for this organization to be seen as raising the standard of the advisor talking to the customer, because you're talking with a trust deficit already. There is a problem, existing problem. So it's very important to be sensitive to that and come across as someone who places investor first to be able to get credibility and not degenerate into, you know, someone who might be lobbying, for example. So, because there is a suspicion in the mind of the investor. In a market with trust deficit, you know, an association will be seen with a bit of suspicion. So it's important to build that credibility as well.
Okay. I think we'll have 1 or 2 questions from the audience. If anybody has any question, please raise your hand. Yeah. Okay. Yes, back. That mic, please take the mic.
Hello.
Yeah.
As you were rightly saying, that there is a large number of insurance advisors who are not necessarily regulated by SEBI, they are regulated by IRDA. They are also offering advice. Then there are postal agents and the works. Okay. So you have a huge number of people offering advice. How would a SRO, which is being formed essentially by, let's say, mutual fund distributors and this, regulate all this? Firstly, isn't there a, too many regulators for too many sectors here? There should be a uniform regulator for entire financial services. Only then this kind of a thing is enforceable. Otherwise, unless, you have one section being over-regulated, and one section is absolutely not regulated.
Fair enough. No, you
Right?
see, what happens is we have to start somewhere. See, there are large number of people, there are a lot of challenges. But this group of people, who have come together, if they can really impress upon the customer, like for example, if you look at brokers, in last 20 years since the Trade Guarantee Fund has started, we have never had any defaults in the entire system. Huge amount of confidence has been created. So even if there are, 2 million people who are around who are giving advice, if this group of 20, who are having 30–40% of distributors under them, if they can really show to the market that these are the good practices and we are following them, I think that would really be a fantastic first step. And then it is just a, pull kind of mechanism, because seeing the good work and the kind of quality and integrity which is displayed by these people, it would be very easy to really, take on the entire community. So numbers are huge, they don't matter. If we, show very demonstratively that we are here and we are showing the integrity, please come to us. I think that would be a good enough step.
Let me add to this. See, basically, as you rightly said, there are multiple regulators and still there are gaps, okay, which people also exploit. There's a new framework that has been proposed under Financial Sector Legislative Reform Commission, FSLRC. So, as and when it is implemented, there is going to be a consumer protection framework, which will basically work on all consumer protection activities, whether it is in insurance, whether it is banking, whether it is in mutual fund, whether in stock market, and so on and so forth. When that happens, and if this SRO is doing a good job, then my understanding is that this SRO could become an SRO for all such activities of consumer protection. That's how I would rather see the evolution of this SRO going forward as and when these things happen.
So any person accredited with this SRO? Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, be a little more direct with his question of comparing insurance. Insurance is pretending to be regulated. There's nothing beyond that. So, yeah.
Sir, we are on the same page. I was meaning that only. But just being a little polite.
Okay, I think we will close the discussion over here. You wanted to ask something?
I think on behalf of the FII board and as a member of the distribution community, I just wanted to make an observation that in last 40 minutes, the power of the ideas that has been generated in this very historic place, one of the birthplace of financial securities markets in India, has been tremendous. And we very much, take your inputs with great responsibility. And we assure you will come up in a defined timeline next few days, our first few days of the new year with a 10-point agenda and priorities with milestones of what FII and the proposed SRO, the OFD is going to focus on. But we have got extremely valuable inputs and we cannot thank you enough.
Actually, Dhirendra Kumar has got converted. He was very strongly against SRO, beginning of the meeting. End of it, end of it, he's saying, yes, we should have an SRO.
Imposed on us.
Yeah,
It's not a matter of choice
okay,
anymore.
I think, okay, let some good come out of the mandate which is there. And getting, because such a huge market is there in this country, how can you have 2 crore mutual fund investors? I mean, if there are 50 crore people having, Aadhaar cards, there are 30 crore people who are having PAN cards. How can you have 2 crore mutual fund investors? It is a huge, huge, huge trust deficit. Ignorance and trust deficit. I think if the SRO, even in a small manner, if we can try restoring this, saying that our man who comes to you, we stand by him and he carries the certificate of integrity. If we can give that confidence to how many ever people who come in contact with us, I think that would be a huge service to the entire, population of this country. And it would indirectly increase the growth. Like, for example, what happened in BSE, we had an average turnover of 200 crores. Harshad Mehta time, we had turnover of 600 crores. And today we crossed 3 lakh crore. It is nothing but imposition of trust in our operations, the trade guarantee fund, the depository system and online trading. That is the automated trading system. These 3 pillars have got this whole business explosion. So same thing can, of course we are more regulated, we all the time complain, so many audits, so many this, so many that. But end of it, I mean, society has benefited, the people who are in touch with exchanges have benefited and volume has exploded, which is benefit for brokers only.
One small point I would like to make in this context. If you're comparing stock exchanges with mutual funds, the problem is that your deliverables are definite. That if you buy this stock, you'll get the delivery. But when people lose money by buying stocks, they don't come to complain to you. They can't, because it was their decision. That is the problem with mutual funds. And I think when you said it is trust deficit and ignorance, I think it's more ignorance than trust deficit. People just don't understand markets. When people lose money by buying their own stocks, they don't tell anybody. They just keep quiet about it. But when people lose money in mutual funds, they go and tell the world about it. And they blame everyone about it. So that's the problem.
I would just like to add one thing, which is one unintended benefit of this SRO, which I can think of, is that last 6 years has been a nightmare for investors who keep moving back and forth on the investment process. The way I have to be KYC'd, then the kind of form which has to be filled, the mechanism by which a nominee has to be added or deleted, or the inheritance of something. So this is something which if the SRO is able to drive some degree of, we haven't been able to arrive at one single application format for all mutual funds so far. Yes. So something as mundane and simple as this. So this could be a very unintended benefit that can be derived from a SRO.
I think I thank all my panelists for taking part and being very candid and forthright in their views. on the topic, and I thank the audience for the patient listening. Thank you very much.
Just 5 minutes, please. We have a memento giving session. I request Mr. Jignesh Desai, FIA Director, to please come on the dais and give the memento. To Shri Dinaben for moderating the session and sharing her valuable inputs. To Mr. Ashish Chauhan, MD CEO of the Bombay Stock Exchange. To Mr. Deepak Chatterjee. I request Mr. Siddharth Shah, Chairman BSE Brokers Forum, to please come on the dais and give the memento. To Mr. Dhirendra Kumar and Ms. Uma Shashikant. Thank you everyone for gracing the occasion. Thank you very much. I request everyone to come for a group photograph. Siddharth sir. I think 1 minute, just one photograph with Mr. Jignesh Siddharth sir. Please, you can just, please. Thank you very much. And share the theme of the second panel, as well as basically introduce the panelist.
After an enlightening session and engrossing session on the SRO topic, we move on to the next leg. It is my duty, humble duty, to introduce you about Financial Intermediary Association of India, the key initiatives being taken by FIAI, and introduce the next panel. So I'll make a brief, 5 minutes presentation on what FIAI stands for, what are the things we are doing, and take it forward from there. Financial Intermediary Association of India was incorporated in year 2009. It's a non-profit, Section 25 non-profit organization. We have 18 members in our body. It comprises of Independent Financial Association, Advisors Association. It comprises of banks, national distributors, private wealth management companies. Currently, we have 18 members, and they comprise of all the marquee names in the industry, as well as comprise of people who are associated as IFAs, as IFA Association. These are our key members, 18 members which we have. And as we talk today, we represent about 1/4 or little more than that of the total industry AUM. We also underlying distributors who work along with our 18 members. They comprise about 30,000 ARN holders, which on our rough and ready estimate will be more than 50% of the total ARN population. What are the core purposes of FIAI? I think our tagline says it all. We are the common voice of the Indian financial distribution industry. Our core job is to do industry development, industry research, engaging our own members, engaging regulators on the pertinent and relevant and contemporary issues and items which can lead to the industry growth, can also solve issues on a common platform. Issues which can be raised by an individual or a member on its own is all collated, and which are common issues for the industry are taken up by FIAI. And these issues, as we talk today, are taken up with SEBI, and currently since we have to deal with AMFI, we deal with AMFI. So our core purpose is to bring the issues together, solve them, and take it forward. Training, financial literacy, seminars, holding seminars is also one of the core purposes of FIAI. We also engage other stakeholders, which includes AMFI, AMCs, NISM, other trade bodies like BSE Brokers Forum, and with BSE. So we operate with every stakeholder in the financial ecosystem. What are the key initiatives we have taken at FIAI in the recent past? As has been mentioned and is a public news, we have applied to SEBI through a fully owned subsidiary called OFD, Organization of Financial Distributors, for the mutual fund distributor SRO. And as we talk today, we wait for the mandate to come out very soon. So that entity is designated as named as OFD. As I mentioned, we do regular white papers. The whole idea is to make sure that at an industry level, you have a body which can take up issues, solve those issues. Those issues are not pertaining, those are constructive issues. Those issues are not pertaining to complaining or are not pertaining to taking the regulator head on. They're meant to be constructive issues for the good of the industry. SEBI notified the investment advisor regulations in January 2013. We worked around with our members in the distributor community as a whole on the particular subject. We took up the issues with the regulator, tried to resolve a lot of issues. So that was one big thing which we did in recent past. On events front, we have been participating in industry seminars as industry partners. We have organized our own roundtables, seminars, conferences. We have partnered with CII, ASSOCHAM, FICCI, CAFE Mutual, FESB, AIWMI, and few other associations in the industry. Recently, we have undertaken a project called which is codenamed as Project Arthik Gyan, which is meant to partner with NCFE, National Council of Financial Education, which has taken a noble cause of driving financial literacy at 8, 9, 10 standard school students. Our volunteers across the country from our member organizations will imbibe training on the particular subject. This is a pure voluntary activity without any financial or any forced intent. So this is one project which I think we will hear more about in the month of January. FIA has also started connecting with the investors. We are a distributor body. We feel that we should connect with the investors to take feedback on how distribution practices should evolve. In this context, we have recently launched a survey, and I can share a few initial findings. The purpose of those initial findings is just, I think the next panel is coming up. Could be some good food for thought or good thinking points coming out of that particular survey. These are not conclusive, let me tell you, and we'll encourage you to take that survey yourself before we frame out the results next month. Right now, as we talk, we have less than 500 respondents. So please take the results with a lesser sample right now. Few of the key highlights, I will take not more than 2 minutes here. First point which we had asked are the investors whom we addressed this survey, this across the country, across all demographies, across all distribution investors, was of the satisfaction on the mutual fund schemes. Quite obvious, liquid fund investors were the most satisfied investors, followed by diversified equity fund investors. This is on a scale of 1:5. 3 to 5 is what we have taken as satisfied and more. The least satisfied investors were in the sectoral equity fund category. And overall mutual fund scheme satisfaction was at 77%. So this is the number of people who are satisfied with mutual fund schemes. Finding 2, we asked a question pertaining to how much satisfied they are with the distributor who catered to them. 40% of them did not have a distributor, so the sample size is reduced to 60%. Out of that, 70% of the people, 70% of the investors were very much satisfied with the distributors who advised them and serviced them. Finding 3, we asked them what are the desirable attributes of a distributor which they look forward. What are the qualities they look forward from a distributor? And the qualities were, the 5 points which we asked them was understanding his needs and investment objectives, knowledge of financial markets and products, quality and appropriateness of the advice, and the responsiveness to service request and query resolution, and the final point being trustworthiness. If you see the graph, They wanted all the 5 attributes, but understanding the needs and investment objectives, trustworthiness were the 2 key attributes everybody wanted, followed by the others, which are also not less so. I think we will refine these results as we go forward and give you a better picture in the next few days. Last but not the least, what are the investors' view on how the regulator should put priorities on the industry? Interesting results. More investors wanted the regulators or the upcoming regulators. I mean, they are not aware of anything called SRO, but yeah, they're looking at a regulator from a regulation perspective. 93% of them wanted better selling practices. 90% wanted simplified paper process. I think that's a point Dhirendra also made. And also a way of having a better investor grievance resolution. And then followed by, and in fact, product innovation and launch of new scheme was not a very high priority item. So we have pretty much whatever schemes we want in the industry. So these were the broader points. We can go in detail, and I think next time when we meet, we will probably delve it further. But we encourage you to take this survey at our website, which is fiai-india.org/survey2013.html. So we encourage you, and we will publish the findings in the next couple of weeks. Moving on, it's my duty to now introduce the next panelist. I would like to invite on stage the moderator for the evening, Mr. Prem Khatri, founder and CEO of Café Mutual. Mr. Khatri. Mr. Khatri runs the most popular financial distribution website called Café Mutual. He needs no introduction. The site is doing great, not only in India, but globally as well. Welcome, Mr. Khatri. Next one, amongst the first panelists, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Bajaj Capital and Director at FIA. Needs no introduction, quite a public figure, runs one of the largest retail distribution houses of the country, Bajaj Capital. Welcome, Mr. Bajaj. Next on panel is Mr. Vishal Kapoor, General Manager, Wealth and Priority, Standard Chartered Bank for India and South Asia. He's also a Director at FIAI. Welcome, Mr. Kapoor. Next on panel, Mr. Kamlesh Rao, Executive Vice President, Head of Priority Banking, Kotak Mahindra Bank. Mr. Rao also has been speaking on public forums on a regular basis. Finally, but not the least, Mr. Dhruv Mehta, Chairman of Foundation of Independent Financial Advisors, one of the largest IFA associations in the country. Welcome, Mr. Mehta. With this, I'll just set the context of this, and I'll leave it to Mr. Khatri to, in fact, define the agenda. The context of the panel topic being role of distributors in the industry growth. The context being the distributors are the backbone and the last mile connect for the mutual fund industry. We heard it in the previous debate also. They are a catalyst to make the financial inclusion reach the lowest segment of the society. Role of distributors is not just to sell the mutual fund product, but to make investor understand which product will really help in achieving their goals. One of the challenges being faced today by the industry is to grow the overall pie through increased investor penetration. This panel will explore the role of distributors in growing the industry. The eminent panel will also deliberate on the challenges and opportunities faced by the distributor community and how we can use our current strength to remove the impediments to growth. This discussion, we hope, will probably bring out new ideas, best practices, technology solutions, and regulatory changes required to help to grow the industry. We also brought the survey findings. Maybe some of them can also be used in the panel. Without much ado, I leave it to Mr. Khatri to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gurpreet. Now, how much time do we have? We're running...
I think 45 minutes.
Okay, great. And I'd like someone to alert us. 10 minutes, 5 minutes. So that. Okay. Good evening to all of you. And over the next 45 minutes, we will talk about certain issues which are very close to the audience here. When Dina ended the session, she actually gave me a cue to begin this particular discussion. She said that very disappointingly, there were only 2 crore investors in mutual funds. And actually, the insiders know that actually the number is much less, because we know that investors tend to hold multiple folios and family members. And if you were really to do a consolidation of the real mutual fund decision makers, then the number would actually shrink a lot. So the idea is to perhaps dwell on some of these themes over the next 40, 45 minutes. But before that, Vishal, I wanted to ask you something. What's the mood of the distribution community today? Where are we at? Have the market conditions, have the fact that the regulatory framework seems to be getting settled in some sense, is that bringing you some comfort? Are you optimistic if we were to do a similar seminar next year, a year later, on 20th of December 2014? What do you think? You'd be very cheerful, more cheerful, less cheerful than what we are today?
Thanks, Prem. I think the mood is really of resilience. And I would like to say optimistic, but I don't think we can say that as yet. What we've seen over the last few years is really, and the numbers sort of mirror that, is a reduction in the size of the distribution, sort of size of the industry. So the good news is that anyone who's distributing now has really, in a sense, been resilient and therefore is a very, very committed player. Yeah. That means that the quality of distribution that you have today is very, very different from what you had maybe 5 or 6 years back. So we may be suffering a bit from the legacy of whatever happened in the heydays of the bull run, etc. But the quality of distribution today, I think, is significantly better. And because of that, we have all the reason to be very optimistic for the future because of both quality of distribution as well as product performance. But today, I don't think I can say that distributors have absolute clarity about how the path will be. Now, of course, they're committed and they have been around. Therefore, that shows and reflects their commitment and resilience. Yeah. But a bit more clarity in the future would even help further.
Great. Whenever we talk about the growth of the industry, it's always linked up with this word called trust. Yeah. At the last panel, someone mentioned trust deficit. Now, Rajiv, I know that this is a theme on which you dwelt in the past. Tell us, what do you think about where is the trust, what is the trust level between the investor and the distributor today? And if there is a deficit, what could be done to overcome that deficit?
So, Prem, you're hitting the most core point right at the outset. I for one, believe that if you want to, there is definitely a trust deficit. And if you want to rebuild trust and look at the core principles of building trust, first is transparency and acceptance. So unless we go to investors and say to them that in the past there have been some errors and omissions, and we also present to them a plan how we are setting it right, trust will not improve. I'll share with you an example, our own experience as an organization. On 1st October 2012, we moved to a completely trail-based model in mutual funds. And we went back to investors and told them that we have been, over the years, we educated them. We said, over the years, we've been operating in this first year commission model, and then lower trailer. What possible conflicts it could have? Maybe even with you, there may have been errors and omissions despite our very strong internal regulation and compliance procedures. And some clients said, yes, it did happen with us, but they appreciated our honesty and they reassured us of their willingness to stick with us, and they forgave us, and we moved ahead. So it is very, very important first to accept something went wrong, and then secondly, which I again illustrated, to keep the communication going. This is the time. I think today investors do not have as much of an issue over what has happened in the past. They are willing to get over it. But what they are very sore about is that where have you gone missing? When somebody, after selling them a scheme, and this is one survey after the other, when after selling the scheme, when the distributor stroke advisor disappears and doesn't go back, that is what makes them the most sore. So therefore, what we are doing, and I say this to anybody I meet, our task today is to, when the markets are low, when the volumes are not so high, it is the time to increase the intensity of your investor contact, be meeting more people, sitting face to face with them, and that is how the improvement will come by.
Okay. One important thing which is always linked to trust. SEBI has one quick fix solution to everything: regulate. So bring in more regulations, and hence it will create more trust because people will behave better. Now, Kamlesh, according to you, last year this investment advisors regulations came into the picture. What has been the impact on ground? Because as of now, we know that the number of people who have applied for registrations or have registered is not even in triple digits.
Just taking on from what Rajiv said, we've realized through regulation or through reality that the first important thing about trust is nothing like, do you partially trust me? It's like a 0 or 1, okay? So from a relationship point of view, it's very clear that trust has to be either full, and that's what customer actually looks up to you for, yeah? And I think one of the key issues that we've seen which creates the problem in this deficit is because of what we call product sell. The customer at this point of time is looking at his advisor or his distributor, and therefore I'll just answer your question in a minute. And I said this at some other forum because I think we genuinely are in the business of distributing advice. Yeah. So if we don't keep demarcating our role, whether should I be selling products or should I be doing advice, because finally at the core of everything that you do for a customer is you got to make sure you provide him right advice. The problem in the market is if you are hooked onto a product, yeah, and by and large it's a practice which I'm not saying how many of them follow or don't, but it used to happen in the past. They used to be in love with the product that means so much for you and may not necessarily mean right for the customer. Yeah? And we are of the firm belief that there is nothing called a right product or a wrong product. It's actually genuinely a mismatch between the product and the customer that you are selling it to. Yeah? Because if you are selling a product which can promise high returns, and I'm gone on those days where you can actually sell products with high returns, and you sell it to a customer who doesn't have the capability of managing the volatility, is when the biggest trust deficit actually comes in. Yeah? So does regulation help? So, they often have this belief that, my personal belief is, I keep saying this to my people that, when you have your pet dog, you make sure you dock him so that he doesn't go in diverse directions. Okay, so from a regulation point of view, I think what it brings in is the framework, and I think that's important to absorb. Yeah, it's not about what you can do and what you can't do. It's the framework in which you can operate. And as long as I think a lot of us sitting here are largely responsible for so much of distribution to our customers, we follow the framework. I think it's a good thing that there is some framework in terms of some regulation, but too much of everything is where it will actually create the spoil.
No, but I wanted to talk to you more about the implementation of that particular regulation. The reality today is, and this is for the entire panel to address, that very few people have applied for registration. Yeah. Okay, so is it a non-starter? What impact will it have on the ground? One, to your business, and two, to the investor overall. Because it seems to be, at this moment of time, maybe a little harsh to say, but it seems to be a non-starter of sorts. It has seemed to have no impact whatsoever on how things are. So,
yeah, I think the impact is because they've followed a regulation from SEBI, followed by some kind of a working paper by Reserve Bank of India. A lot of feedback has been taken by Reserve Bank of India. We still don't know whether the final guidelines on those are yet to come. So I'm saying from a banking fraternity point of view of distribution, we're still not sure which way. I think there is a reasonable amount of confusion at this point of time whether we want to go this way or go that way. And that's bulk of the reason why the offtake has not been so great, at least from the banking distribution point of view. I think that's where
actually from very few entities altogether, across the entire spectrum. But Dhruv, You represent one of the largest federations of advisors across the country. Now, how does the distribution community play a role in the mutual fund industry when the community itself is not growing? There are hardly 10,000 active distributors, and there are perhaps not more than 50,000 KYD compliant advisors across the country. What do you think is stopping people from coming in, and what can be done to attract more people so that the distribution community increases, the size of the industry increases?
So, Prem, as I was, can you hear? Yeah. To my mind, I think the reason that the community is not growing, I mean, clearly the community has degrown. And I strongly believe that the degrowth has happened post the banning of the entry load.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a clear cut on the remuneration pie that a distributor was making. And on our estimates, I think it led to a reduction of 33 or 40% of income that an individual IFA was making. So for somebody at an IFA level, if in a year he's making a remuneration of 50,000 or 60,000 rupees, even in a small town, and he's able to go by it, live, you know, meet his needs. If that 50,000 is cut to 25,000, you know, the profession doesn't become viable for him. And that's what I think is that a lot of small IFAs have left the profession. People who had entered maybe at the time of the boom in 2004-05, they have all left because they found that there are other avenues, whether, you know, selling a real estate or selling fixed deposits. They found those avenues more profitable, and therefore they have left. The second, I think, is what has impacted new entrants is that the revenue model to a person entering this field is not very clear. So I would say in my own case, when I started, I was in industry, and 10 years back, I decided to move into, you know, an advisory role. I wanted to position myself as an advisor, but at that time, there was no concept of, say, a fee model, or you did not have, you know, low-cost plans, like a direct plan today. So customers were used to paying for advice through embedded products. So in my discussions with the customer was very happy, Dhruv, you give me advice, but you make money through the product. Yeah. The customer knew I was working in that company, so they knew the structure as what is the commission that you make through the product. He calculated what is it that I would make at the end of the year. And that was the arrangement that was undertaken. So after over 10 years, when a relationship has been built, now today the regulator says that you change that. If you want to be an advisor, you collect a fee. But is the customer ready? Because ultimately the regulations have to be made not for the distributor. The end objective of the regulation is the customer. The customer should be given a choice as to how he wants to structure. That is one. The second is most of the distribution-led people who are giving advice, who are actually rendering a lot of advice, as you mentioned, we are distributing advice. And if all your income is coming from distribution, people are not opting for the new regulations because in that CBS BARD, you know, you receive commission. So I think the more prudent would have been that if you go by the US experience where they are allowing the multiple options. You can be a fee-based advisor, you can be a commission-based advisor, or you can be a fee and commission-based. But you need to declare. So once you're bringing a regulation in place for somebody charging a fees, but if they had not prohibited him from also getting commission, you would have seen a lot of people who want to call themselves as advisors, who want to upgrade on the value chain. You would have seen a lot more people, you know, coming under the regulation.
But today, that part is done and it's behind us and not likely to change in a hurry at least. But what would you still do? You are head of a very important association in the industry. What would your recommendation be to someone to grow the thing? What would you do to attract people to this industry? Tell them that this is a much coveted career. Make it aspirational.
So I think I think very simple that one of the key things, I think, if you really want a large number of fleet on the ground, then I really think that the remuneration pie has to increase. As I mentioned to you, without a honey pot, you cannot have bees coming.
Okay.
If you want a large, and India needs, I mean, just as you have in the insurance, why do you have 1.7 million people? And why do you have 40,000? It's just the difference in the remuneration. People are going to come into any profession only because there is remuneration. You get doctors, you get chartered accountants, because there is income for them. If in distribution you're not going to have income, people are not going to come. So I think the first question to address from an industry point, how do you get income? So one model would be the national, say the brokers or the banks, the large banks, because through the use of technology, they have an ability to reduce their cost. But can they increase a large fleet on the ground? Because I think the cost of compliance for them is increasing on one hand. So I think the challenge is how do you increase? Because the mutual fund industry structure, the remuneration part has been so tightly controlled in terms of the expense ratio of what you can spend, what you can't spend. Unless that is addressed, I don't see. Because any of the consumer products that you see, Lever, Procter & Gamble, you have Maggi noodles available in anywhere in the country you go, even in the remotest of places. Because the distributor over there or the chemist over there is making 10%, 15% commission.
Okay, Vishal and Rajiv, you know, I see that you're pursuing this SRO thing with a lot of passion. And I can see this goes somewhere beyond your self-interest. Okay? Why? Why do you think SRO is going to change anything?
Very important. You've touched the bottom of our chord of our heart, Prem, with this. We've done a lot of thinking. We've been meeting informally, all of us, you know, over the years. We are good friends. But we felt that we needed a formal platform to engage, interact, and come up with a common solution for the industry, because everybody discusses problems here. Nobody really comes up with solutions. We thought, we came to a conclusion that there is nothing bigger than self-responsibility, becoming accountable yourself. What is required, and I'll start a little macro and then come down to your specific answer. I think what is wrong in Indian mutual fund industry, which includes distribution, and how we are different from international markets where this model is extremely successful at, you know, multi-trillion-dollar market. There, everybody understands their role. Everybody understands each other's role. He's the registrar. His job is to do transaction processing. They are the regulators. Their job, as Kamlesh said, is to set the rules of the game, draw the boundaries, the Lakshman Rekha. The product provider knows their job to manufacture products. They have boutique outfits. They invest in R&D. They hire the best guys from the institutions and they create boutiques, and they are everybody. Somebody is a debt manager, somebody is a hedge fund manager, and they know their job. They run boutique operations. And it is the distributor's job is to connect with the last mile investor, educate him, build his trust and bring him in. And they also recognize that he needs to be remunerated. It's an expensive proposition, as Dhruv has been highlighting. In India, I think we've got it wrong. Here, we believe in supermarkets, we believe in industrial conglomerates, so we want to be everything to everybody. So there is a complete chaos, and especially on the product provider side. Product providers don't know what role they are supposed to play. They want to be supermarkets, they want to be all and end all of distribution, including wanting to regulate them. So, which I believe is a preposterous thought, that how can you, you know, in the spirit of self-regulation, the SRO 2004 guidelines, all of us have read, it is talking about self-regulation. You know, it is mutual fund distributors should be self-regulating. So, we take responsibility, we are accountable. Why didn't we get together before? I think we need to, we all need a little bit of a caning ourselves. We should have come together a long time ago, but Derai Darustai, we are now together and we are making a strong bid. And the specific answer to your question, Prem, is that in a school, when there is a shararti bacha, when there's a little intelligent kid, but who's little naughty, what do you do? You make him the monitor of the class. So a little bit of that, so we're not running away from our responsibility.
Okay.
You need to.
So Rajiv has decided that he's bright and smarter than a lot of people here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So our distribution community needs to be given legitimacy of sorts.
Okay.
And that itself will rebuild the confidence, self-confidence. And when self-confidence builds up in this community, we will rise beyond the resilience. And we are all like, when Vishal was talking about resilience, I was, imagining a Hollywood movie, the last survivor, the last man standing. So we are all like last man standing in this industry. Yeah. We don't want to be Hollywood heroes anymore, brassed and, war battered. I think we need our suits and ties back. We need wallets back in our pocket. And we need to create role models. Very important. We need B school graduates. Infosys, between Infosys and TCS, they are hiring 40,000 engineering graduates this year. Yeah. Why don't I want to see advertisements from Standard Chartered hiring 5,000 people, Kotak Bank hiring another 10,000, Dhruv hiring people, us hiring people. So we want, we want more economic activity, and those kids will apply when they see poster boys. So one of the jobs of the SRO would be to create poster boys for the industry, awards, standards, certification, people who are recognized, honored in the society, Bharat Ratnas of sorts. So I don't know, a very long answer to a...
But playing the devil's advocate, much of it can be done through an informal association of, truly what FII is currently doing without aspiring to be an SRO.
Yeah, I would reflect upon the point what Deepak made. And Deepak has been head of a very important mutual fund, one of the largest, that amongst the aspirants, who has the skin in the game, whose existence is at risk, it is ours. So we have the pain, and only therefore we can bring the gain to the solution.
Okay. Okay. One thing I've been very curious about the Indian distribution community and AMCs to a large extent. And picking up something from what you said, want to be all things to all people. As I find the same affliction affecting the distribution community. I had once traveled to US on work, and I was amazed. I came across advisors who were not only focused on doctors, I actually came across a person who was not only focusing on dentistry, he was focusing on dentists who specialized in cosmetic dentistry only. Okay? So I came across banks which were very clear to me in articulating what kind of customers they were going after and what solutions they were offering to the clients. And it was very, very clear to me. When we deal with distributors, the large ones say we cater to everyone, okay? And the small ones also give me the same answer. हम retail को भी करते हैं, हमारा customer lawyer भी है, government employee भी है. Why? Because somewhere it restricts the growth of the business because you're not specialized enough, you're not focusing on meeting needs of people. Yeah?
I think see, there is, within any business model, whether it is an IFA or whether it is a bank, I think there is some inherent amount of segmentation or thinking around who I can give good service to. On a lighter note, maybe the reason you had to broad base is because you couldn't find enough of those, few people who, you want to target. But that aside, the fact is, I think, let's take a wide consumer bank like either mine or Kamlesh's. We do serve a wide variety of customers, but the solution is very different. So it's not necessary that everyone is getting exactly the same product or service or solution or advice or sophistication, etc. So at what we would think the new customer level, the first-time investor, what you would offer as a product and how you would offer it is very different from what we may offer at a very high net worth individual. Both the type of product, the way it is delivered, the sophistication with which you monitor portfolios, etc. So I do think that it is not because of maybe faulty marketing that distribution has not grown. If that's the general feel that, are we smart enough in our marketing? I think we've been pretty smart enough in the way we marketed. I would think that one of the fundamental reasons, coming back to how do we grow, is because the differential in getting a brand new customer doesn't really exist. So you have the 2 crore folios or maybe the 1 crore folios which are active, or the 50 lakh customers who might be behind it or whatever. But the fact is, to grow that significantly takes a lot of effort, and the reward for that effort just isn't there. Coming back to what Dhruv was saying as well, right? So as a distributor, you have a choice. Do you want to go back to your same 100 customers and try and manage their wealth and money? Or can you afford to make an investment and that is a significant investment, to grow significantly to the next 400 customers, the next 1,000 customers? Now, unless you have the confidence, like in any business, to make that investment, you will shy away. And the question I really want to ask ourselves is, like in any other industry, we must recognize that distribution costs money. There's nothing wrong in that.
Yep, of course.
Unless we are willing to reward that extra effort of getting a brand new customer into the mutual fund industry, why are we expecting distributors to really be so selfless and take that extra effort? We have made a change in this model by saying that in B15 cities, we will pay distributors something extra.
Yep.
I would like to propose that we should adopt a similar model for brand new mutual fund folios as well. If a distributor, if Rajiv's organization brings in a brand new first-time customer into a mutual fund industry, we know that because he is being certified by the same KYC organization. Why shouldn't Rajiv's organization request for a bit more? Because he's done a service not just to himself or the customer, but to the entire industry.
But that was tried in a way, when SEBI said that will allow you to charge 100 rupees.
Yeah, that's 100 rupees,
that princely sum of 100 rupees, which came with a lot of caveats and opt-ins and opt-outs and various other things. But I guess you make the point very well. Very good.
No, Prem, I just wanted to add to what, one other way of segmenting, one is by saying doctor or lawyer.
Yeah.
I think the key need today is to segment a customer by his risk profile.
By
his risk profile, if the IFA distributor, banker, can A, take the right set of products on the investment platform? I think the big issue is the distributor is not looking at the customer as a whole. And therefore, there are both sides of his balance sheet that he's supposed to take care of. One is to take money from him, but there are so many other requirements of the customer, which means he may require a loan, he may require something else, he may require... Today, I think the way to increase the remuneration also for the IFA and the larger distribution fraternities to see, can you look at both sides of the balance sheet of an individual? It's not just a single requirement of mutual fund. I mean, he has so many diverse requirements, and as the customer's segment keeps on growing, the requirements even keep on being larger. And for everything that you do, you have two advantages. One, you can make money, so the remuneration can go up. B, you get so many more touch points to deliver far more better service and far more better products to the customer. So it doesn't get restrained to this whole dynamics only of talking about the money that he gave you and what happened to that. If you can expand that at a customer level, then I think it can make a big difference for inclusion of distributors in this community.
Okay. One very important role that you've identified for your trade body is investor education. How do you think investor education, and what should distributors do, first of all, about investor education, how they should do it, and how will it benefit? Tell us.
Right. While I talk about investor education, Prem, today, the biggest challenge is that when you have a investor connect meet at the ground level, it is very difficult to get, a quorum in the room. So that becomes the hardest part. So now we have gone down the innovation route. And I'll you may laugh at this, but I give you some practical examples, because for a firm like us, it's a part of our DNA. If we have a core charter of 4 things to do, investor education, investor connect is one of them. So we are engaging, we engage with resident welfare associations. And if it is a group of senior citizens, we would look at what their needs are. We would not only look at their financial needs, we would look at their life needs. So let's say we find that many of them, are needing some kind of a medical reference. So we would tie up with a homeopathy clinic nearby, bring the homeopath to do free checkups for all of them, and then also talk about their money. So we have to adopt a path of innovation. Right now, there is the real ground level challenge is that the communication gap is wider than we think, because the disconnect has existed for a long time. So therefore, one needs to work harder, and one needs to go, be a little more innovative to go back and connect with. So there's a little bit of irony, in what I say, because it's all about somebody's financial life, money being important, their life revolving around money, but this kind of stuff is required. I think what is also needed is a little bit of legitimacy, and I want to build on this point, a word I'm using, for the second time today. Like you saw, we've seen public-private partnerships in other sectors.
Yeah.
We need a third-party, stamp of approval, a bigger brand than us. So let's say a BSC itself, or a National Stock Exchange, or the Government of India Consumer Investor Protection Fund, or SEBI's Investor Protection Fund. We would want such bodies to lend their name to these Investor Connect programs, and that would bring in more investors. That would, and I not only talk about, because whoever is your existing client, on the basis of relationship, you call them and they come in. But when you are looking to expand the market, when you want to educate people on the benefits of investing, financial planning, and want to bring them in, at this point of time, people are in such a, confused state of mind. Inflation is high, they don't have savings, they are so overcome by consumerism that it requires very unique tactics to bring them in. So like, somebody who I respect, Uday Kotak, Uday has a classical quote that we are slowly becoming a nation of savers to investors, and that's the challenge. So I would say that we are, when it comes to India below 25, and that's bulk of our population, half of our population now, India below the age of 30, 35, and who are earning their first salary, and they should be opening their SIPs. We have to convert non-savers into savers. And that has become the biggest challenge today.
Okay, one, Dhruv, to you. One development which took place again last year was this introduction of direct plans. So how much of a threat has it been really to fund house, to distributors like you, and how have you managed to overcome it?
Hello?
Yeah.
I think the impact varies from person to person, and of course the most dramatic impact has been on the institutional brokers, people dealing with corporates. I think almost all of that, maybe 80 or 90% of corporate money has moved to direct, and some of the individual IFAs also who were doing work for corporates, all that money has moved out. So in my case also, there would be few clients who were corporates who were investing in liquid funds only. They have all moved to the direct route. And I think the impact has also been there on the equity asset class also, although the impact is much less. I don't remember the latest numbers, but I think 10 to 15% of the equity inflows have also moved to the direct route. So, but once again, while I think this is again a benefit, what the regulation has done is, this again is a benefit which goes more to the sophisticated and the large investor. It is not something which helps the ordinary or the retail investor. And what the regulation has done is again reduce the pie for distribution. There was a remuneration pie available. With the introduction of direct, that pie has got reduced. So indirectly, I think that is another factor which, affects retail penetration.
What has been your experience, Vishal?
My experience has been that it is very specifically benefiting, or not even benefiting, but being used by institutions. In a lot of cases, when I ask these institutions that, is it really worth the benefit? The answer may be no, not really, because these are institutions by definition. The margins were 5 or 10 basis points. It's not an awful lot. But the thing is that for any commercial entity, and you can imagine yourself being on the board, if you have a treasury operation or an accounts department, for you to justify why you're using a distributor when you can go directly becomes a challenge. So if given a neutral playground, would many of these companies choose to come through a distributor? Maybe the answer is yes, because it is a very, very thin slice of fee for a fairly extensive amount of service. But the way it has panned out is that, I don't think the end user is really dramatically happy in the institutional segment. The distributor is definitely not. And therefore, I think, like Dhruv asked the right question, who have we benefited and at what cost?
Okay, one last question to all the 4 panelists. Distribution is actually affected by 2 very significant stakeholders in the business. The manufacturers themselves, right? And the second is the regulator. If you were to have a wish list, one each for each stakeholder, one wish for the manufacturers and one wish for the regulator, what would it be?
So I think from the manufacturer's side, what one needs is a consistent approach to the sort of products which they position, and they need to consistently position their products, because you generally find this tendency of flavor of the season, manufacturers. Yeah. I mean, if it is a customer-driven thing, fine. Or, to my mind, what manufacturers need to do is like times when the markets are bad, which is what I don't know whether the regulations also allow. Say when like the Sensex was at 17,000, that's the time that push needs to be given. And that push, I think, can be given if incentives are better. So when markets are bad, that's the time that greater interaction is required to sell products. Whereas you find that products are pushed only when they have performed. So that's a responsibility that manufacturers could take to try and push products when the times are good for investing, when the product has not done well.
But the manufacturers could very well tell you that that's your job. They manufacture liquid funds, they manufacture debt funds, they manufacture sectoral funds, they manufacture equity funds. Now you take a call on what fund is appropriate for what.
Yeah.
What time? I mean.
Yeah, so I'm saying one of the things that manufacturers can do is at the time that they feel. See, because there is a two-way process. One is to understand that the markets are not good, or see this is a good time to invest in equities.
Come to the point of the regulator.
On the regulation side, I strongly believe that we do not have two-way communication between the regulation and especially the distribution community.
But you've been part of many of the meetings that...
Yeah, so over the last 2 years, there has been a one-way communication. Like we would get an appointment, we give our views. But what they make of it, we do not come to know. For example, the regulation on investment advisors which came, SEBI floated a concept paper. It invited a lot of feedback from people, and it met people. And I believe they got 400 responses. But once you got those responses, what is your view? See, there are 400 people have given different responses.
Yeah. So SEBI should be more responsive.
So I think if that two-way communication is there, where you ask, invite views, you listen and you give back the feedback, there needs to be a greater feedback, then the regulations will be more responsive.
Kamlesh, one wish list, one wish from the regulator, one wish from the manufacturers.
You know, from a manufacturer point of view, like Vishal spoke about, it's not about where you pay more and where you pay less, okay? So you pay more where the demand is lesser, and where you pay less where the demand is higher. So it's like a conflicting situation. Yeah. So I think manufacturers should focus on also ensuring where the demand is large, how do you make sure you can expand that pie of the market. I think that's one key, because if you pay more in outside top 15 cities and the market for that is not yet developed, then nobody gains out of that because there's no distributor. So it's like chicken and egg, who comes first? Yeah. And I think from a regulator point of view, the key thing that we keep pushing with regulators is do whatever you think you want to do, but do it not from either benefiting or de-benefiting the distributor. Some of the distributors seems to have become a big, and a villain is the wrong word to use, but in that sense a villain. But I think if you do everything from a customer benefit point of view, I think the regulation will become far more pro the customer as well as the distributor, because I don't think at any point of time the distributor and customer can afford to be or are in conflict. So if the regulation can be done in a matter of benefiting the customer, I think the distributor will automatically get benefited for sure.
Vishal.
I think I'll keep my comments focused on distribution and marketing, because obviously there are many areas we could speak about. I think for manufacturers, what I would request them is that, they obviously propagate long-term investing for customers, they propagate long-term thinking for distributors. I think they have to think about, therefore, their business in the long term as well. I really find, and just as an example, a remuneration structure where, first year you get X and year 2 for the same asset and everything else, for servicing the same asset, you get half of X. Very bizarre. Why is the, servicing or any other thing that the distributor does in year 2 or year 3 or year 4 very different from what you expect him to do in year 1? Now, in doing that, aren't you complicating life for yourself? So, if we do really want to think long term, we have to have a long-term business model in place, and I don't think that's there today. For the regulator, I think the simple suggestion I would make, or a humble plea I would make, is that one, let's not paint the entire industry with the same brush. There may have been some issues, but if it's getting effectively tackled through some measure, then let's move ahead. Second, let's recognize that quality will cost a bit of money. So we cannot have high quality distribution for free for the masses of India that we want to reach out with these products with. It will cost some amount of money, and let's be fair in compensating service providers in that manner. Fee should not be a bad word.
Great. Rajiv.
I have a, so I absorb all these wishes and put them out as my own too, but I have a very, since you used the word wish, my wish is that, and I've actually thought about it, I have wished that AMCs focus on their job, which is to manufacture good products for our clients, which really connect with their needs and focus on their core competence, and leave the job of regulation of distributors to distributors. And therefore, my wish is that they withdraw from the race for self-regulating distributors. And a wish for regulator in same continuance is to make the right choice and pick the right body.
And any guesses for... Okay. Good. Thanks. Wonderful to have this discussion. I think we've run out of time. And thanks for being such a wonderful audience, and really enjoyed this. Thanks for making it.
You made it very interesting.
Thank you very much. Just not taking just 2 minutes. I'll quickly call Mr. Sudhakar, Director FIA, to give the mementos. I request Mr. Sudhakar to give the memento to Mr. Vishal Kapoor. I request him to give to Mr. Rajiv Bajaj. And to Mr. Kamlesh Rao. I request Shri Jignesh Desai, FIA Director, to please come on the dais and give the memento to Mr. Dhruv Mehta. And last but not the least, to Mr. Prem Khatri for moderating the session and giving the valuable inputs. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Can we have a group photograph, please? Yes. Mr. Vispi, Chief Executive Officer, BSE Brokers Forum. Last but not the least, I would request Shri Neeraj from NJ India Invest to please come on the dais and give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, friends. Though the audience is less, but it has been a very thought-provoking evening. Both the sessions were very, very exciting and got a few key takeaways. I will not take long, but a few takeaways from both the sessions. The SRO is mandated, and the panelists' view was also the same, that it is required. Though there are challenges to manage, it is tricky to regulate advice, but by virtue of technology, by having unambiguous code of conduct, and by creating an agenda which brings back the trust, which is not so much prevalent, then obviously the SRO can help in building the investors' confidence again, get new investors, and take the mutual fund industry and the distribution industry to newer heights. And obviously, there was a consensus that the distribution community be allowed to regulate themselves. So I guess these were the key takeaways. I would like to thank all the panelists, the moderator in the first panel, Mrs. Deena Ben Mehta, the panelist, Mr. Dhirendra Kumar, Mr. Ashish Chauhan, Ms. Uma Shashikant, and Mr. Deepak Chatterjee. And in the second panel on the role of distribution, I would like to thank the moderator, Mr. Prem Khatri, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, Mr. Dhruv Mehta, Mr. Kamlesh Rao, and Mr. Vishal Kapoor. I would also like to thank all the members of FII who has attended this program, all the audience who have taken out time to attend this program, people from media, people from ad factors, and most importantly, this event would not have been possible without the support of Bombay Stock Exchange and particularly BSE Brokers Forum, Dr. Aditya Srinivas and CEO Mr. Vispi Bhatena. Please give them a big hand. They have given us a absolutely amazing platform to conduct this. And I would also take the privilege to compliment and thank our principal consultant of FII, Mr. Gurpreet Singh, of his commendable efforts to make this event today and successful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
I would request all the FIA members, the directors, the BSE Brokers Forum CEO and Mr. Gurpreet to come on the dais for a common group photograph. Please, all the dignitaries, the moderators, the panelists, the directors of the FIA are please requested to come on the dais. Yes. All panelists, yes, yes, definitely, please. All the panel members, FIA directors, FIA members, please come on the dais.